talk about Leagues Cup because the
Let's do it.
Columbus Crew won yet another trophy and demonstrated for me that they should go down as one of the best MLS teams of all time. And they're not even done yet. So I wonder how much more they're
Of
going to
all
accomplish.
time, you're willing to throw that out there of all
Okay.
time
Okay.
already.
Maybe. Well, I
Oh
think.
my God,
Okay. Maybe
Jimmy.
that was too big of a jump.
Wow. Why are we
Listen.
disrespectful for you've seen some of the greatest teams. You're automatically going to crown them that?
I didn't. I said maybe one of
Yeah,
the
but
best.
even in the discussion.
Yeah, I put him in the discussion. Yeah, I
Wow.
would. Because I think this is just the beginning of something. As long as Wilfred Nancy stays in place as coach, that is sustainable. And
I can't believe you're saying that.
I
I
can't.
honestly
Okay,
can't.
well, I want you to go up against like if we look at Toronto FC.
That DC United team, the Chicago Fire team.
Listen, both of those teams were very good.
Oh
Don't get me
my
wrong.
goodness
They would
gracious.
be good games. Like if you put the current Crew team against that DC United team in when MLS was starting, they won a whole bunch of MLS Cups. Now, I will say, in fairness to them, every one of the starters for that DC United team played for their national team. And we can't say that now about current MLS teams.
No,
But
and I'd say even that LA Galaxy team with Robbie
yeah,
Keane, and
that team was good. I
they were
trained with that team. They were
come
good.
on, what are we talking about,
I know,
Jimmy?
but listen. I've got a tweet here from Matthew Doyle who says between the 2023 playoffs, the 2024 CONCACAF Champions Cup, and Leagues Cup, the Crew have gone 12-2-4 with a plus 16 goal differential. And along the way, they've beaten Tigres and Monterrey. They beat last year's Shield winners, Cincinnati, and this year's leaders, Miami. And they beat LAFC in 2 finals.
I'm sorry, but if
I'm just saying.
If Leagues Cup is any evidence, then you can't. I don't want to hear anything about Mexican teams now. You're talking about Leagues Cup teams are just like, we're over it. They don't care.
If Leagues Cup happened in Mexico, do you think? I just think things would be a little bit different.
We're talking about Leagues Cup, though. I don't want to hear Mexican teams were not. They shipped it in. They mailed it in. They wanted to go home.
Okay.
Leagues Cup, there wasn't a single Mexican team in the semifinals. You're going to tell me they were taking it serious when they clean house every year in CONCACAF Champions Cup? Come on.
Okay.
Now.
Okay. So let's talk about year 2 of the Leagues Cup. Do you think this competition is a success or a failure?
I'm not willing to say it's a failure yet, but I can tell you one thing. It did not command anywhere near the attention it got last year. And of course, Messi made his introduction in last year's version of the League Cup, the inaugural Leagues Cup. This year, I think the interest was pretty low, if I'm going to be honest. And the Mexican teams, obviously, they didn't really show up either. So you put in that, and Mexican teams not really doing well, and putting in like a performance that would lead you to believe that they were taking it serious and that they wanted to win it like they do the CONCACAF Champions Cup, then I think the writing's on the wall there. So I think it would benefit the MLS teams if they played in Mexico in terms of playing in more difficult environments and being uncomfortable and the altitude and chasing the game. It would be more beneficial. Would they make more money? Probably not. But ultimately, what are you trying to do? Is this a competition for money, or is this a competition to grow the league and have better players and be more respected? And I think if you go out and play Leagues Cup and all the games are in Mexico and you have the same type of performances you did in this Leagues Cup, where it's all MS teams in the semifinals, that will speak volumes of the growth of this league. That will show the quality in this league after beating the Mexican teams in Mexico. And then there's no more excuses. And so, the Mexican teams wanted to go home. They were traveling. They're away from the family. No, actually, we beat you in altitude with all your fans in the heat, and it didn't matter. Then I'd say, hey, job well done. But you could tell this Leagues Cup lost a lot of steam.
Yeah, there are some positives to take away from this that I want to get into that are almost unemotional, just more on paper. And it still feels like it's a real estate grab. Like, we're just going to create more content. This is a competition so that we can sell more to Apple TV, and they're going to have more to show that's a little bit different. And what I do like about it in theory is that we finally have a competition that we're trying to add more value to, of course, where we pit MLS clubs against Mexican clubs. Like there's a natural rivalry there. Let's get into it. There's some natural animosity. How do we tap into that? And then along the way, make a lot of money. And so, but to your point, it feels like it's more about the money first and player development second. Because if it was player development or not just player development, but helping your teams get better as well and be in tougher environments and get out of their comfort zone. Going down to Mexico is an easy fix here. Logistically, I don't know what that looks like logistically, but
I can tell you from the player's perspective, most of the players I've talked to in Major League Soccer, they could care less about Leagues Cup, but the money's good. There's good bonuses. So that's why there's an incentive to play, because you're making much more money in Leagues Cup than you do in your everyday bonus in MLS play. So that's I guess the initiative is like, okay, if we can play and make a long stretch, we're going to make a good chunk of change. But you know, at the end of the day,
for me, the negatives still outweigh it, right? So the Leagues Cup is trying to squeeze out the Open Cup. We've talked about it before. The Open Cup for me is historic and meaningful and has been around forever. And we need to honor that history. And that should be getting all the love and money and adoration, in my humble opinion. And so there's that. And then it's so early on that there's no history to it, right? It just feels like another manufactured competition to manufacture rivalry. And I get that you have to start somewhere. You have to put something in place to make it happen. And again, in theory, I love figuring out a way to play meaningful games against our rival Liga MX in real competition. So I like that in theory. I just wish it wouldn't try to replace the Open Cup. Another thing, though, that a positive ripple effect of this, Chuck, of the Leagues Cup, is that for the teams that get knocked out early, I do think it allows teams to reset and kind of almost like German
Revolution.
Yeah, but yeah, the Revolution is a good example, right? They needed that break. They needed like take a breather and get reset, and Caleb Porter can
get everyone healthy.
Get everybody healthy, and then they go and first game back and they smack Montreal away from home 5-0. I mean, that's a good example of that. But so yeah, it's getting healthy, I think, is really important. But it reminds me of the Bundesliga in Germany, where they're doing it for weather reasons, but they stop down for 5-6 weeks. They can get healthy again, they can get reset, and then they can kind of take a deep breath before they start their stretch run. And I don't know if that was an intended effect by MLS, but I kind of like that the teams that get knocked out early have some time to figure some things out. And I actually think that makes the second half of MLS a lot more intriguing, because people can really go full gas, as opposed to when we were playing, Chuck, where you're just barely trying to survive and not get you're like on 70% by the end of an MLS season. And you're like limping into the playoffs, and you're like, well, I hope we're the best team over 3 weeks so we could be champion. And even though that might still exist at the end of this, at least the guys from the majority of the teams that didn't have a deep run in Leagues Cup seem to be a little bit more fit. I think the play and the quality of play is a little bit higher, but that's my thoughts on that. Any last final thoughts of the show and of Leagues Cup, Chuck?
I would say congratulations to the Columbus Crew. Their fan base looked incredible, and they wanted to win, right? It mattered to them. Another trophy. Wilfred Nancy again showing, some tactical genius and getting his team to play the right way. It's fantastic how no matter what, they figure out a way to stay true to their principles and keep possession and get Diego Rossi and Cucho Hernandez involved in the movement to find space. Just I love that he's coaching up players who, ultimately maybe aren't at that level or proven to be at that level, but he's showing them how they can have consistency in his system. So kudos to Columbus Crew. And then for LAFC, Steve Cherundolo has to figure out a better way to keep possession, to keep the ball. Right now, it feels like they're very predictable in the way that they play. Still effective when you have a player like Denny Bouanga, but you got to have players who can control the tempo of the game and play to Giroud's feet. I mean, it felt like Giroud was on an island at times, and he'd keep the ball, and then he'd have no one to play the ball to. So they have a ways to go, but another final for Cherundolo and LAFC, and now hopefully they use this as motivation and a way to work better so that they're better suited to try and to win MLS Cup.
Yeah, two teams we could see once again in a final for MLS Cup, as you mentioned, high quality on both sides. But a shout out to the Crew, the hardest working team in America, for winning yet another trophy in the short time that Wilfred Nancy has been in charge. That guy is really something special as a manager. I'm very curious to see where he goes at some point. Sorry, Crew fans, after he leaves Columbus onto something next.